What do you get when you cross a brilliant car designer, a cocaine deal gone wrong, and the most iconic movie car in history? The answer isn't a joke. It's the most expensive midlife crisis in automotive history. Meet John DeLorean, the man who went from creating legends to becoming one, just not the way he planned. Today, we're diving into how one man's ego wrote checks his company couldn't cash, and how spectacular failure sometimes builds the most enduring legacies. Let's set the scene. It's the 1970s and John DeLorean is basically the Elon Musk of Detroit. If Elon wore better suits and had even more audacity. This guy created the Pontiac GTO, the car that invented the phrase muscle car. He was GM's youngest division head ever, making serious money and living like he was auditioning for a Bond film. But here's where our story gets interesting, because being a corporate rock star wasn't enough for Johnny D. In 1973, DeLorean basically told General Motors, "Thanks, but I'm about to show you how it's really done," and walked away from his golden handcuffs to start his own company. Most people having a midlife crisis buy a Corvette. DeLorean decided to build an entire car company from scratch. Now, starting a car company is like trying to perform brain surgery while riding a unicycle. Technically possible, but the margin for error is thinner than DeLorean's patience for corporate politics. And our boy Johnny was about to learn that lesson in the most expensive way possible. The $1 million mistake. Here's where DeLorean's story goes from ambitious to absolutely bonkers. Instead of setting up shop in Detroit like a reasonable person, he decides to build his factory in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Why? Because the British government was basically throwing money at anyone willing to create jobs there. We're talking £100 million in funding. That's like convincing someone to give you $500 million today to chase your automotive fever dream. The man essentially ran the most successful government con in history, and it was completely legal. Enter the DeLorean DMC-12, a car so futuristic it looked like it time traveled from 2050. Gull-wing doors that opened like a bird taking flight, a stainless steel body that never needed paint, and a design that screamed, "I'm too cool for your regular car problems." On paper, this car was revolutionary. In reality, well, let's just say the gap between vision and execution was wider than the gap between those gull-wing doors. But here's the thing about building dream cars. Sometimes dreams turn into nightmares faster than you can say quality control. And the DMC-12 was about to become the automotive equivalent of ordering a supermodel and getting a mannequin. When dreams meet reality. Remember how I said the DeLorean looked like it came from the future? Well, apparently that future had really slow cars. The DMC-12 went 0 to 60 in 10.5 seconds. That's not sports car territory. That's my grandmother's station wagon could beat this territory. The car had all the sex appeal of a supermodel, with the performance of a golf cart with a flat tire. Customers were expecting Ferrari performance and got something that struggled to outrun a determined jogger. But wait, there's more! Remember that beautiful stainless steel body? Turns out working with stainless steel is like trying to gift wrap a porcupine. Technically possible, but why would you torture yourself? The manufacturing process was more complicated than assembling IKEA furniture while blindfolded and wearing oven mitts. The numbers were getting uglier than a custom paint job on a vintage Ferrari. What was supposed to cost $12,000 to build was costing $25,000. Math isn't rocket science, but apparently it was too advanced for DeLorean's business model. By 1982, the company was $175 million in debt. That's the kind of money that makes lottery winners nervous. So picture this. You're John DeLorean. You've got a car that looks like $1 million but performs like a broken promise, and you're hemorrhaging money faster than a Vegas casino. What's your next move? Well, if you're thinking maybe diversify into pharmaceuticals, you're thinking like our boy Johnny.
The Cocaine Chronicles.
When most people's businesses are failing, they might consider cutting costs, finding new investors, or maybe just accepting defeat. John DeLorean? He decided that drug dealing was a solid business diversification strategy. I'm not making this up. The FBI caught DeLorean on camera trying to arrange a $24 million cocaine deal. The man went from building cars to Pablo Escobar cosplay faster than his car car went 0 to 60. Picture this scene. You're in a hotel room with what you think are drug dealers, negotiating cocaine prices like you're haggling at a farmer's market. The FBI has you on tape saying you want to make enough money to save your company and then some. The audacity is almost impressive. This is like watching someone try to solve a Rubik's Cube by hitting it with a hammer. Technically an approach, but probably not the right one. October 19th, 1982. John DeLorean gets arrested in a Los Angeles hotel. The guy who created one of the coolest cars in movie history was suddenly making headlines for all the wrong reasons. The mugshot alone could power 1,000 memes. There's DeLorean looking like he's wondering if this is covered under his entrepreneurship insurance policy. Now, to be fair, DeLorean was ultimately acquitted. The court ruled the FBI had entrapped him. Now, you might think this is where our story ends, with DeLorean in handcuffs and his company in ruins. But plot twist, sometimes the biggest disasters create the most unexpected legacies. The plot twist of all plot twists. Here's the beautiful, twisted irony of this whole disaster. DeLorean's company crashed and burned harder than a meteorite, but the car became more famous than he ever dreamed possible. Enter Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis, the guys making a little movie called Back to the Future. They needed a car that looked futuristic for their time travel story, and the DeLorean was perfect. It was already from the future. It just happened to be a future that didn't work very well. Suddenly, the car that couldn't outrun a determined pedestrian became the most iconic vehicle in cinema history. Doc Brown made the DMC-12 cooler than DeLorean ever could. Today, DeLoreans sell for more than they did when they were new. We're talking $40,000 to $100,000 for a car that originally cost $25,000. That's like buying the world's most expensive paperweight that occasionally starts. The car that bankrupted a billionaire became worth more after the company died than when it was alive. If that's not the ultimate task failed successfully moment in business history, I don't know what is. But here's the real kicker. This spectacular failure teaches us more about business, dreams, and legacy than most success stories ever could. The lessons from chaos. DeLorean's story is basically a masterclass in how not to run a business. Overpromise, underdeliver, ignore basic math, and when all else fails, definitely don't pivot to drug dealing as your exit strategy. But here's what's fascinating. The man understood vision and brand building better than most entrepreneurs today. He created desire for a product that barely worked, convinced the government to fund his dreams, and built something so memorable that it's still iconic 40 years later. The DeLorean DMC-12 proves that sometimes being spectacularly wrong is more valuable than being boringly right. Sure, the company failed harder than a screen door on a submarine, but the legend lives forever. John DeLorean wanted to build a car for the future. He failed at that, but accidentally built a car that would define the future of cool. If you enjoyed this deep dive into automotive chaos and entrepreneurial disasters, smash that like button like you're John DeLorean pitching to investors. Subscribe for more stories about brilliant people making spectacular mistakes, because apparently that's where the best lessons live. What's the most spectacular business failure you've ever heard of? Drop it in the comments below. And if you want more stories about cars that changed history for all the wrong reasons, let us know in the comments below. Until next time, remember, dreams are great, but maybe keep your business plans legal and your math accurate.